Maria, you're 32 years old and you're still a student. Those words from my father echoed in my head as I watched him through the hospital's security monitor, walking slowly down the corridor with my mother, both looking terrified. Abel. Out as cancer consultation. They had no idea they were headed to my office, to see the daughter whose 13 years of medical training they'd dismissed as avoiding the real world. The nameplate on my door read Dr. Maria Santos, MD, PhD, Chief of Pediatric Oncology, but to them, I was still the family disappointment who'd chosen books over business. In 30 seconds, when they knocked on my door, everything they believed about success, education, and their useless daughter was about to shatter. Hit that like button if you've ever had your family question your path while you were quietly becoming exactly who you needed to be. And tell me in the comments, have your parents ever needed the exact expertise they once mocked? My name is Maria Santos, I'm 32 years old, and I've spent the last decade becoming one of the country's leading pediatric oncologists, while my parents continued to ask when I was going to get a real job that didn't require so much school. What they didn't understand was that every year of education they criticized was preparing me to save children's lives, including potentially my father's. But let me take you back to where this story really begins, too. The family dynamics that made them see my medical career as an extended phase of avoiding adult responsibilities. The Santos family had very traditional views about career paths and financial success. My father, Carlos Santos, had built a successful landscaping business from a single truck and determination, growing it into a company with 15 employees and commercial contracts throughout Orange County. My mother, Rosa, had worked as a bookkeeper for various small businesses before managing the financial side of Dad's company. Both parents had left school after high school to start working immediately. They measured professional success by quick entry into the workforce, steady income growth, and tangible business results. Education beyond high school was acceptable only if it led directly to higher-paying jobs within a reasonable time frame. My older brother, Miguel, 35, had followed the approved path by getting a business degree from Cal State and joining Dad's landscaping company as operations manager. His progression from field worker to supervisor to management represented exactly the kind of career trajectory my parents understood and respected. My sister Carmen, 28, had earned family approval by becoming a dental hygienist, a practical healthcare job that required 2 years of training and offered good pay with regular hours. Her career fit perfectly into their framework of education that served clear, immediate purposes. Then there was me. The daughter spent 4 years earning a bachelor's degree in psychology, then another 4 years in medical school, then 3 years in pediatric residency, then 2 additional years in oncology fellowship training. To my parents, my educational trajectory looked like an expensive way to avoid entering the real workforce for 13 years. They saw each additional degree as evidence that I was afraid of practical responsibilities, and preferred the protected environment of academic study to the challenges of earning a living. "Maria's still in school," became Mom's standard explanation when relatives asked about my career. "She's studying to be a doctor, but you know how long medical training takes. Very complicated, very expensive." The subtext was clear. Maria is smart but impractical, pursuing endless education because she's intimidated by real-world competition and doesn't understand the value of earning money immediately. This perception was reinforced by my financial situation during training. While Miguel was earning $75,000 managing the landscaping business, and Carmen was making $65,000 as a hygienist, I was surviving on resident physician salaries of $50,000 while working 80-hour weeks and accumulating $200,000 in medical school. "Oh, Dad, when are you going to finish school and start making real money?" became Dad's standard question at family gatherings. He'd built his business by working smart and hard, achieving financial independence by age 45 through practical decisions and steady growth. My medical training was incomprehensible to him. When I tried to explain residency rotations, board examinations, or fellowship applications, his eyes would glaze over with polite impatience. "That sounds very complicated, Mia," he'd say, "but 13 years is a long time to be preparing for a career. Don't you think it's time to start actually working?" What Dad couldn't understand was that I was working. I was treating patients, saving lives, and developing expertise in one of medicine's most challenging specialties. But because my training didn't fit his model of linear career progression, he saw it as prolonged education rather than professional development. The breaking point came during Carmen's wedding reception 2 years ago, when Uncle Roberto asked me about my student situation in front of the entire extended family. "Maria's still studying to be a doctor," he announced with patronizing affection. "How many more years of school do you have left?" "Mia, I'm not a student anymore, Uncle Roberto. I'm a pediatric oncology fellow at Children's Hospital. I treat children with cancer." "Very impressive," Aunt Elena chimed in with polite encouragement. "And after you finish your fellowship, what kind of job will you be qualified for?" The question revealed everything about how my family perceived medical training. Aunt Elena assumed that fellowship was preparation for future employment, rather than recognition that I was already working as a specialized physician. "I'm already qualified for the job I'm doing. In 8 months I'll complete my fellowship and be eligible for attending physician positions." "But what about salary?" Uncle Roberto pressed. "Medical school is expensive. When do you start earning enough to pay back your loans?" Miguel jumped in to support his uncle's concerns. "Maria, Dad's right about financial planning. I've been earning good money for 10 years while you've been accumulating debt. How do medical careers compare financially?" The conversation was surreal. My family was discussing my career prospects as if I were a college student considering options, rather than someone who was already established as a physician and preparing to lead cancer treatment programs. What they didn't know, what I'd never found a way to explain, was that pediatric oncology attending physicians earn between $300,000 and $450,000 annually, plus research grants, speaking fees, and consulting income that could easily push to TAU compensation above $500,000. But more than the financial success, I was developing expertise that could save children's lives and advance cancer treatment research. My work had real impact beyond anything that could be measured by immediate salary comparisons. The conversation that changed everything happened 6 months ago, when I received a phone call that would transform both my career and my family's understanding of what I'd been building. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, Chief of Staff at Children's Memorial Hospital, called on a Friday morning in September with news that would redefine my professional trajectory. "Maria, congratulations. The search committee has selected you as our new Chief of Pediatric Oncology." I set down my patient chart, suddenly paying complete attention. Chief of Pediatric Oncology was one of the most prestigious positions in cancer medicine, leadership of FEED, a department that treated over 800 children annually and conducted groundbreaking research that influenced international treatment protocols. "The board was unanimous in their recommendation," Dr. Martinez continued. "Your research on pediatric brain tumors, your clinical excellence, and your leadership potential made you the clear choice despite your age." At 32, I would be one of the youngest department chiefs in the hospital's history. But age was less relevant than expertise, and my fellowship research had contributed to treatment breakthroughs that were already saving children's lives. "Dr. Martinez, this is incredible news. When would I begin?" "January 1st. We're also prepared to offer you a comprehensive package, $420,000 base salary, research budget, administrative support, and the opportunity to build the pediatric oncology program according to your vision." Chief of Pediatric Oncology. The title carried weight in medical circles that my family couldn't imagine. But more than prestige, the position represented the culmination of 13 years of preparation that had led to the ability to lead efforts that could save thousands of children over my career. "There's one more thing, Maria. The hospital board wants to feature our department leadership in the new facilities campaign. Your appointment represents exactly the kind of medical excellence they want to highlight." The media campaign launched in November, featuring advertisements in medical journals and local newspapers that highlighted Children's Memorial Hospital's clinical expertise. My profile emphasized both the department's treatment success rates and the research innovations that were improving survival rates for childhood cancers. The most prominent placement was signaged throughout the hospital, professional nameplates and department directories that identified me as Dr. Maria Santos, MD, PhD, Chief of Pediatric Oncology. I had no idea my parents would see that signage when Dad's routine physical exam revealed concerning symptoms that required oncology consultation. The call came at 2:15 p.m. on a Thursday while I was reviewing treatment protocols for newly diagnosed patients. "Maria?" Mom's voice sounded strained and frightened. "We need to talk to you about your father." "What's wrong, Mom?" Dr. Henderson found something concerning during Carlos's physical exam. Some kind of growth that needs to be evaluated by a cancer specialist. My heart sank. "What kind of growth?" Where? In his abdomen? Dr. Henderson referred us to Children's Memorial Hospital because they have the best oncology department. We have an appointment tomorrow afternoon. Children's Memorial Hospital. My hospital. My department. Mom, let me make some calls. I can help coordinate Dad's care and make sure he sees the right specialists immediately. Maria, we appreciate the offer, but Dr. Henderson already arranged everything. We're supposed to meet with the Chief of Oncology tomorrow at 3:30. The Chief of Oncology. Me. Mom, there's something I need to tell you about that appointment. What do you mean? The Chief of Pediatric Oncology at Children's Memorial Hospital is me. You're coming to my department to meet with me. About Dad's treatment. The silence that followed lasted so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Maria, that's impossible. You just finished your fellowship last year. You can't be a department chief. Mom, I was appointed Chief of Pediatric Oncology 3 months ago. I've been trying to tell you about my promotion, but you and Dad keep changing the subject when I mention work. You're telling me that you're the doctor we're supposed to see about your father's cancer? Yes. And Mom, I need you to understand something important. Even though I'm Dad's daughter, I can't be his primary oncologist due to conflict of interest policies. But I can oversee his care and make sure he has access to the best possible treatment. That conversation continued for an hour, with Mom asking detailed questions about my qualifications, my hospital role, and what Dad's referral meant for his diagnosis and treatment options. For the first time since I'd started medical school, my mother wanted to understand exactly what I did professionally rather than when I planned to finish doing it. The next day, I watched through security cameras as my parents approached the pediatric oncology wing. They moved slowly through the hospital corridors, looking overwhelmed by the medical environment and anxious about the appointment that would determine Dad's treatment plan. When they reached the main department entrance, they stopped at the directory that listed all department physicians and their specializations. I could see Mom pointing at my name, showing Dad the credentials and title they'd never understood. Then they walked to my office door, where the nameplate read Dr. Maria Santos, MD, PhD, Chief of Pediatric Oncology. Dad stood staring at the sign for a full minute, as if trying to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with the medical expert whose expertise he was seeking for his own potentially life-threatening condition. I opened the door before they could knock. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Please come in. They entered my office slowly, taking in the medical journals, research awards, patient thank you letters, and framed degrees that documented the 13 years of training they'd dismissed as extended education. Maria, Dad said. Quietly, I don't understand. How are you qualified to treat cancer? Aren't you too young to be a department chief? Dad, age doesn't determine medical expertise. Training, experience, and demonstrated competence determine expertise. I've completed 13 years of specialized education and training specifically to treat cancer patients. I gestured to the diplomas on my wall. Bachelor's degree in psychology, medical degree, pediatric residency, and oncology fellowship from some of the best programs in the country. Then 2 years of additional research training in pediatric brain tumor treatment. Mom was reading the thank you letters from families whose children I'd treated. Maria, these families, they're thanking you for saving their children's lives. That's what pediatric oncologists do, Mom. We treat children with cancer and work to cure diseases that would otherwise be fatal. Dad sank into the chair across from my desk, still processing the disconnect between his understanding of my career and the evidence surrounding him. Maria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Of course, Dad. Are you really qualified to help with my medical situation? This isn't about family obligations or trying to make me feel better about having cancer. I pulled out my curriculum vitae and handed it to him. Dad, I've published 47 research papers on cancer treatment, spoken at international medical conferences, and led treatment teams that have achieved survival rates above national averages for most childhood cancers. Well, reviewed my research record, his eyebrows rising as he processed information about publications in top medical journals, invitations to speak at conferences worldwide, and grants totaling over $3 for cancer research. Maria, this CV is extraordinary. Why didn't you help us understand what you were accomplishing during your training? I tried to explain my research, my clinical work, my professional development. But you kept asking when I was going to finish school and get a real job. It was difficult to communicate the importance of work that didn't fit into traditional career timelines. Mom reached across the desk and took my hand. Sweetheart, we had no idea your medical training was this comprehensive. We thought you were just studying for a very long time. Medical specialization requires extensive training because we're responsible for life and death decisions. Every year of education you questioned was preparing me to diagnose and treat diseases that require extremely specialized knowledge. Dad looked around my office again, seeing it with new understanding. Maria, if you're this qualified, why do you work with children instead of adults? Wouldn't adult oncology pay more money? Dad, pediatric oncology is actually one of the highest paying medical specialties. But more importantly, childhood cancers are different from adult cancers. They require different treatments, different approaches, and specialists who understand how cancer affects developing bodies. I opened my laptop and showed them treatment outcome statistics that demonstrated how specialized pediatric care improved survival rates compared to general oncology approaches. The reason Dr. Henderson referred you here isn't because we treat children, it's because we're one of the best cancer centers in the region, and some of our treatments are effective for both children and adults. The conversation continued for 2 hours. I met parents asking detailed questions about my medical expertise, my hospital role, and their understanding of what specialized training actually meant for patient outcomes. Maria, Mom said finally, I owe you an apology. For years I've been treating your medical career like an extended education phase instead of recognizing it as the extraordinary professional achievement it obviously is. Mom, you measured my success using timelines that made sense for their careers. But medical training is different. It takes longer because the stakes are higher, and the knowledge requirements are more complex. Dad nodded slowly. Maria, I'm proud of what you've accomplished. I should have been saying that for years instead of questioning your choices. That conversation led to the most honest discussion about career and success that we'd ever had as a family. They learned about medical specialization, research contributions, and the difference between education and professional development. 3 days later, after comprehensive testing and consultation with my colleagues, we determined that Dad's growth was benign and treatable through minor surgical intervention. His relief at the diagnosis was matched by his amazement at the sophisticated diagnostic process that had been coordinated by the daughter whose education he dismissed as impractical. 6 months later, Dad's recovery was complete, and our family dynamics had shifted fundamentally. Instead of asking when I would finish my education and get a real job, my parents asked about my research findings and their implications for cancer treatment. Most importantly, they learned to measure professional success by different metrics than immediate income and linear advancement. Impact rather than just salary, expertise rather than just job titles, and long-term contribution rather than short-term financial returns. The hospital nameplate had been a catalyst for conversations that should have happened years earlier, conversations about different paths to professional achievement, different timelines for career development, and different ways to contribute meaningfully to society. If you're still watching at this point, drop nameplate in the comments so I know who understood that expertise sometimes takes years to build before it becomes visible. The lesson I learned from having my parents see my name on that hospital door wasn't about vindication or proving doubters wrong. It was about the challenge of communicating the value of specialized education to people who measure success by more immediate and visible markers. Medical careers, like many professional paths that require extensive training, develop on timelines that can seem indefinite to people outside those fields. The expertise you're building, the competence you're developing, and the qualifications you're earning may not translate into recognizable success markers until years after you've started the journey. My parents weren't wrong to worry about financial stability and career timelines. Those are legitimate concerns. But they were wrong to assume that because my path looked different from the ones they understood, it wasn't leading toward meaningful professional achievement. The nameplate moment wasn't magic. It was the visible representation of 13 years of preparation that had finally culminated in the expertise and authority to lead efforts that saved children's lives. My qualifications hadn't suddenly appeared. They had been accumulating all along, but in ways that required specialized knowledge to recognize. The most valuable outcome wasn't my family's belated recognition of my achievements. It was their willingness to learn about different career models and expand their definition of professional success to include contributions that take years to develop and may not immediately translate into traditional success markers. Tell me about a time when your family didn't understand the value of your education until they needed the expertise you developed. How did that experience change their perception of what you've been building during years they thought you were just studying?